Hello and welcome to the Kitchen Table Theology podcast, where each week, Pastor Jeff Cranston explores biblical theology that provides practical life applications in an understandable way. Thanks for joining us at the table. Let's get started.
Well, hello again, everybody. Jeff Cranston with you here at Kitchen Table Theology. Thanks for joining us again, Kitchen Table Theologian. And I'm so excited to do this podcast today because we have a brand new friend to the podcast. Her name is Charlotte Clay, and she's the Marketing and Communications Director for the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. And I wanted you, as one of our listeners, to know about the museum. It's just an absolutely incredible place. Darlene and I have been there, and we're planning to return in a couple of months with one of our granddaughters. And Charlotte is a great person to talk about the museum and loves the museum, knows all the ins and outs. And I wanted you, Kitchen Table Theologian, to be introduced to it if you are unaware of the museum. And I know many of you have probably been there, and others of you have heard about it but have never yet been, and still others have not heard anything about this. And I really want you to go. So, Charlotte, welcome to Kitchen Table Theology, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I'm really, really excited to be here and to talk to you about the museum and what's new. Even if you have been already, there are many reasons to come back.
Well, let's just begin at the basic. Give us your 3-minute elevator pitch on what the museum is. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how it got started, when it opened, that kind of thing.
Sure. So the Museum of the Bible is relatively young. It opened in November of 2017. Of course, had a great opening year. Then 2020, COVID hit. The museum did have to shut down when much of DC was shut down for periods of time. But we're back. We've been fully open for a while now. And the museum is absolutely beautiful, state-of-the-art technology intermingled with some of the largest collection of artifacts outside Israel, outside the land of the Bible, that you can see without going to Israel yourself. And that's in one of our galleries in partnership with the Israel Antiquities Authority. So that's really just something incredibly unique that you cannot see without leaving this country. The museum is huge. That often really surprises people. It spans 7 floors, exhibits, interactive experiences, and incredible views of DC. We're just a few blocks off the National Mall. So if you come to DC and want to go to the Museum of the Bible, want to go to the Air and Space Museum, want to go to all the other wonderful Smithsonians and things here, we just hope that you will also come here because it's incredibly interesting to me how people are often surprised by the Bible's influence on our nation's government that doesn't get talked about so much everywhere else, but we're really pointing it out to you here and pointing it out in ways that we hope are really fun. I don't know if you got a chance to do the flyover DC ride.
Yes.
That's as long as you don't get motion sickness, that's a really fun way. You literally fly over DC and see the biblical inscriptions on all the monuments and in the Capitol. And that's just such an interesting way to, I think, frame the rest of your visit to DC. And the museum's consistently been voted a top museum and attraction. We're TripAdvisor's choice last year. So really happy about that. And if you can't visit us in person or you can't make a visit soon, we do have online exhibits on our website, museumofthebible.org. We have a podcast weekly, magazine, virtual tours. So online events, we do hope you'll check us out online as well.
Well, it is an incredible place. And I remember that flyover deal. And it was, quite frankly, I was surprised. Now, I grew up in Maryland.
Yeah.
And so our school field trips, we always complained about going to DC.
Sure.
And then our teachers would always say, well, kids in California would love to be in your shoes. But I had no idea of all the scriptural significance carved into many of our nation's buildings. And you see all of that. And that was one of the first things I think we actually went into. And it really sort of set the tone for the day for me. Yeah. And Kitchen Table Theologian, what Charlotte just mentioned, we'll link the podcast for you. We'll link the website for you to the museum. But the podcast, and I want to encourage you to just go to it today and start listening. It's called Today at Museum of the Bible. Today at Museum of the Bible. I listen to the podcasts, just have been really loving the recent ones. And yeah, if you want to know more about the Bible, this is the place to go. I have to say too, Charlotte, I was a little surprised in a wonderful way of how much of the Old Testament and the Jewish religion plays a part in the museum. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So the museum worked with many Jewish scholars to create our Hebrew Bible experience, which just takes you through the entire Old Testament in a really, really cool way. That's an award-winning exhibit for us that just shows off the museum's technologically advanced side, as well as it's an experience that, yes, you can, of course, a Christian will really enjoy it. A Jewish person will really enjoy it. And the museum has many spaces like that where it's meant to be really inclusive of whatever your faith experience is. We're just presenting the Bible or presenting the Old Testament and hope that it will make everyone intrigued to learn more. Yeah.
And there was, as I was walking around with two other adults, I saw a lot of things that children must absolutely love, people of all ages, but kids especially. So if we want to take like when our granddaughter, who's going to be 13 this summer, what are some of the things that you think she would really enjoy?
Yeah. Okay, so she's a little bit older, so I might say that our children's experience, which is really fun, littler kids love that, where you can literally walk on water and be Samson moving the temple walls. So that's really cool for maybe like more elementary kids. I think he would probably love our Impact of the Bible experience and the VR experience, which is really, really cool. You're getting a tour of some of the most famous biblical sites. We've got new goggles as well. So you get to fly over the Sea of Galilee, climb the Temple Mount, explore the Path of the Good Samaritan, visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So that is incredible. I bet she'd like that. And then, of course, that ride, that Washington Revelation ride, I think, as well.
Yeah, there's a whole section just for children, like you were saying, like the younger children, that is hands-on, extremely interactive. So there really is a lot to do. I mean, everything you described for her that she would like, I can't wait to do it.
Yes.
That sounds good for me too. I love it. So a lot of interactive exhibits. I remember seeing there's a Gutenberg press in the museum, right? That's been rebuilt and built to exact specifications. And so you can watch how the Gutenberg Bible was printed way back in the day. And speaking of that, and Kitchen Table Theology, we're always recommending books to you. And if you've listened for any time, you know that I'm a bibliophile myself, and I love so many of the things I saw in the museum regarding books. Talk to us about some of the more well-known books or the books that you have there that people find. I know I remember seeing Elvis's Bible, just a lot of interesting books there. Tell us about some of those, please.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the Elvis's Bible is a cool example. I mean, didn't realize we have a quote above it where he talks about how much he loves the Bible. So that's in our Bible in the World section, and that's got lots of little interesting things about the Bible's influence on art and music and showing up in lyrics and literature. But in addition to that, we have some incredible sort of crown jewel, really, really rare books or codexes at the museum. One in particular is called the Codex Climacci Rescriptus, and that is especially cool, but it is even more so because it is a palimpsest, which means it's a book. When paper was so much more valuable, they might erase and reuse whatever the writing material was. So that happened with this particular book, where we can see that monks at a monastery in St. Catherine created the palimpsest in the 9th or 10th century. Scholars today, using multispectral imaging, found that beneath that it contained a hidden star map, the oldest one from the ancient astronomer Hipparchus. So that was just an incredibly cool discovery, and that makes it all the more of an important and rare object here. We also have the earliest known copy of the Psalms in Greek, dating from the 3rd century. We have fragments that do go back to the 2nd century that are just incredibly powerful just to look at. And we have prayer books belonging to people like Henry VIII. I'm not sure how much he opened it and read it, but Emperor Charles V. We have unbelievably beautiful illuminating manuscripts, a piece of a Gutenberg Bible. Yeah. So all of that is on our History of the Bible floor, and it's kind of taking you through from the oldest pieces and fragments we have to how does the Bible, yet then you're moving around and seeing, okay, when did the printing press arise and how did Bible societies came about? And then that moves you to an area called Illuminations, where we're showing the efforts to have the Bible in every language around the world. And that is a project that the museum is involved with. And it's really, really cool to see just how many translations have been made of different really tiny, tiny communities and tribes that are so appreciative when they can read the Bible, or at least part of it, in their own tongue.
I think I spent most of my day on that floor with the History of the Bible.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fascinating. And to see the various Bibles through the years, and it just, I could have stayed on that one floor all day, I think. Hey, how many visitors come to the museum every year?
Yeah. So the first year the museum opened, it was almost 1 million. And I'd say we're still in somewhat of a recovery mode. DC is still in a bit of a recovery mode from COVID, where tourism really dipped. So please do come and visit us, listeners. We're hoping to get back to that level. But for now, you're right, the museum is maybe more like half of that a year, and it's huge. So you won't be elbowing anyone to try to get to these really, really incredible objects and learn about them. Yeah.
I think that's incredible. And we're going to do what we can from our end to get some more people up there to see. What the people who come, as you all talk to them and as they give feedback, what's something that most of your visitors are surprised by?
Yeah.
That they just are like, wow, I had no idea. What kind of things are you hearing?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think some people are coming in with maybe like a little bit of a skepticism, where they're thinking, I don't know if I'm here because I'm a museum person or a history buff, but I'm not necessarily like a Bible person. And so and then they're quite pleased to say, hey, like, no one's hitting me over the head with anything here. I'm really able to take this in and learn about it wherever I am, right? And whatever my interest is. So I think that's one that I really like to hear. I love hearing that, like the support from people of different faiths who really enjoy the museum. And another thing probably is that we hear a lot is that people can't believe how big it is and that they needed more time. So it's not a museum that it's easy to do in just less than an hour or something like that quick. You could probably do 2 days here, but even so, I'd say you'd want to probably like a good 4 or 5 hours and stop and maybe have lunch. We have a beautiful rooftop garden. So if you can make a day of it or an afternoon of it, that's the way to do it, because there is so much to see. There's lots of cool films as well. So it's not all walking around, but this is just quite big. And maybe the other thing too would be that the Bible is in so many unexpected places where you don't think about it, that you're seeing, okay, actually the Bible is part of the reason we have the calendar we use and how we measure time. And here, the Bible, who knew that Van Gogh or J.K. Rowling, even writing Harry Potter, they're pulling on some biblical themes here. So that's super interesting to people always. Yeah.
When you mentioned the cafeteria, the food.
Yes.
That was a surprise to me, because most, if not all, the food is made with ingredients that the Bible talks about. Am I remembering that right?
Right. That's right. So it is our rooftop restaurant is called Manna, and it's really meant to be the very yummy kind of Middle Eastern foods of the Bible type of food. So, and I will say, if anyone's going to be coming up anytime in the coming weeks, we're going to have a special Easter brunch that will be, again, kind of that biblically inspired food. So we do special things like that.
If I wasn't so busy Easter weekend here at our church, I would love to come over.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much. But tell us before we sign off today, what's exciting that's coming up this year in 2024?
Yes. Okay, there's a couple really exciting things happening. We are opening in 2 months a new exhibit that's all interactive and digital mapping. So if you've heard of maybe like the Van Gogh experience, is like that, but instead of it being about Van Gogh's art, this is chronicles worship from the Psalms through the modern day. We're calling it All Creation Sings, an immersive worship experience, but you're really exploring like why do we worship? How? What does the Bible say about worship? But in this really, really really beautiful, immersive way. And then another thing, this isn't coming until September, but it's really, really exciting. We are going to have a huge mosaic, beautiful mosaic from the oldest Christian worship space ever discovered. It was found underground in Israel, and it dates to the first part of the 2nd century. And it is so incredible. It has dedications from a Roman centurion and 3 prominent women. So just that is incredibly unusual. And then there's an inscription that says dedicated to the God, Jesus Christ. So it's just, that's going to be unbelievably amazing.
I cannot wait to see that. And I think you did an entire podcast on that recently, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. That was fascinating. And again, Kitchen Table Theologian, go listen. This podcast is fascinating. Charlotte she co-hosts it, and incredible guests on there today at Museum of the Bible is the podcast. The website again, Charlotte, is
museumofthebible.org.
museumofthebible.org. And again, we'll link everything in our show notes for you to do that. Well, Charlotte Clay, I can't thank you enough for coming on, telling us about it. I'm so excited to visit, Lord willing, in May with some of my family members. And thanks again so much for giving us your time today here on Kitchen Table Theology.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Well, remember, Kitchen Table Theologian, Lord willing, we'll be back with you again next time. And always remember that the real power of theology is not only knowing it, but applying it.
You've been listening to the Kitchen Table Theology Podcast with Pastor Jeff Cranston. Join us next time for more insights into biblical truth. If you'd like to know more on today's topic, please check out our show notes. If you have a question from today's podcast, kindly email us at pastorjeff@lowcountrycc.org. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you consider leaving a rating and review? We deeply appreciate your help in getting the word out. And be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or in your favorite podcasting app to continue this journey with us as we learn about and apply God's Word to our lives. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time here at Kitchen Table Theology.